Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of OTA on the Air. OTA on the Air is presented by Transport Services. Transport Services is a full-service semi-trailer dealer with locations in Cleveland and Columbus. Since its inception in 1976, Transport Services has grown to over 80 employees and continues to expand. Transport Services focuses on bringing their customers value by offering trailer rental, new and used trailer sales, mobile repair, and over 30 service bays and a parts distribution services. For more information, go to transportservices.com or contact Brian Brook at 330-573-0401. So again, welcome everyone. And Jeremy, thank you for being with us. Jeremy is the founder and the CEO of DriverReach. And Jeremy's been involved in the industry for quite a while in various capacities in previous business as well. So Jeremy, thank you for being here with us.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, obviously the big issue that we deal with on almost a day-to-day basis is the issue of the coronavirus and COVID and its impact on the economy. But what are you seeing as far as the virus on the impact on driver and driver recruiting?
Well, I can tell you that I think everybody started this year with like, all right, 2020, it's going to be a good year. Come on. And we just kind of tripped right out of the gate, mid-February when things really started to tailspin. And so early on, it was a challenge and we didn't know what we didn't know. And everybody just kind of shut down. But incredibly, I would say after about right around Memorial Day, things really took off. And I've had so many conversations with people who have acknowledged that, the sort of a V-shaped recovery that trucking has experienced, a lot of trucking, not maybe every sector, but a lot of it. And that's huge because I think most people in the economy can't say that. So from that perspective, I think the industry, it's really encouraging. And I've seen a lot. I've had conversations with companies that are on the lead generation side, load job boards and stuff. And a lot of them have said, they took a 20-30% hit, early on, but now they're actually above their previous peaks. So new highs for some of them. So that kind of tells you a little bit about the demand that we've seen since probably late May, early June.
Is this because they cut back so far during the process that now the capacity just shrunk that quick, that fast, and now they're trying to get ramped back up? Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, a lot of that. And in fact, this is what was scary. When in April, I remember hearing, companies that we know that were, laying off their entire recruiting department. And I thought, man, that's a really dangerous game. You don't know how long this is going to last. And I think that was, it was a business decision and I understand it, but it comes at an incredible cost if you're not prepared for when things turn around. The demand for their, companies and their services picked up quickly. You were literally talking a couple of months later. So I don't know that there was any benefit in doing that. You're better off, trying to get some PPP money and, just kind of, hold things down. In hindsight, those who were able to do that, I think, are in a much better place than deciding to lay people off.
So what are we seeing as far as the, drivers going with coronavirus? Is this something where the pandemic and the pandemonium that surrounds it, are these drivers in the situation where their respect level is at as high as what it was when all the Girl Scouts were giving them cookies and people are holding up signs and balloons and stuff? But what are you seeing as far as that out there with driver respect and the impact of coronavirus when it comes to shipper relations and that piece?
Well, it's encouraging, as you know, like back in March and when things really hit the fan and drivers were considered essential and so much accolades were given everywhere from every corner. It was so encouraging as they were continuing kind of that video. Remember that Imagine video? Oh, I love that video. And I think it was so appropriate during the pandemic, the beginning of the pandemic. But what's scary is, and heroes for sure. They're, frontline workers. What's scary is, the demographic is the most susceptible, to a COVID impact. And so that's the scary part. And even in spite of that, or amidst that, many of them continue to perform. But I think that part of the reason for the shortage, or I should say the challenges that companies are having, is I think they lost some drivers who, when things, kind of rolled over a little bit, they left, maybe looked at that as a sign to resign. And in some cases, maybe just didn't feel safe. There's a lot of, information that's out there, information, disinformation, and so much of it is based on people's comfort levels. And so if you're not comfortable and you feel like if I can't go out there and do my job, or I don't feel safe, it's better to hang it up. And I think that had an impact.
Yeah, and I was on early on in this process, I was on a conference call with the governor, Lieutenant Governor Dr. Amy Acton here from Ohio, and they explained who was the risk group, right? And I kind of interrupted them. I'm like, so basically, you just described every truck driver we've got.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, that's a big challenge that we're seeing. So with that, you talk about unemployment insurance, the extra $600, which is coming to an end. Actually, came to an end last week here in Ohio. The interesting part is did you hear any people that were struggling with getting drivers to come off of that and being able to recruit them back to work because of that money? And if so, what are we seeing in the last week or so of people being able to recruit drivers? Because everybody I've talked to says they're in this scenario where they can't find drivers. They need 5, they need 10, they need 20, 30, whatever the number is. What are you seeing as far as that going? What was the impact with the $600?
Yeah.
What's the impact now?
Well, there's a parallel, because I remember, in 2008 and 9, when the economy took a nosedive and the Great Recession, then the parallel was I remember I owned a driver staffing company back then, and when things started to really turn the corner and pick up in early 2009, I had so much demand for drivers, and I was trying to hire them left and right. And those were the conversations I was having then. People said, I can't afford to work. I mean, I'm on unemployment. I'm collecting more money. And that was just backwards. And so I remember those challenges. And I'm not in the business of hiring truck drivers anymore now, but I certainly provide software to help companies do that. And I'm hearing a lot of that same concern, especially going up until last week. I think the jury's still out on what impact, this new week has had, but until or unless they, if they extend the unemployment, the additional amount, it's going to force people who were on the sidelines to either get back in the game or get to work. But I have to think that it's not a majority. There are some that are probably in that boat, but I don't think it's a majority. But unfortunately, when you already are in a position where you have a shortage as it is, any little bit is significant. Just like, the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse, how many is that, weeded out of the pool, and that's only been going on for 6 months.
Right, exactly. Well, yeah, let's talk a little bit about that recruitment piece, because that's going to be vital in getting drivers back into the industry as the economy continues to expand. What are you seeing as some of the best practices out there when it comes to recruiting and the the assistance that your company provides to them, and what are you seeing as some of those innovative ways to be able to recruit new drivers?
Well, you got to make it easy for them to apply. That's for sure. It's, as it's a highly regulated industry. There's a lot of data that's being captured at the application process. And so making that as simple and easy as possible for a driver to complete, when most of them are doing it, on a smartphone, I think that's really critical. And speed to hire, being efficient, because we're operating in an industry that is technologically deficient in at least in the HR and recruiting area. You're using either no technology or some antiquated technology, and there's just a lot of room for improvement. So that's the reason why I founded DriverReach to begin with. But I think what's key is making it as simple and easy as you can for the driver. And you got to be on it. You can't be a recruiter, but then also dispatch and safety. And, sometimes you get in a truck and have to deliver loads. You won't be successful doing that. You need to be able to focus on that, on recruiting. And when you've got applications that come in, you got to get on them right away. and use and communicate with them in the way that they are comfortable with communicating. Certainly call and leave a voicemail if they don't answer, but then follow up with a text if you've got a platform that allows you to do that, which is, I think, really valuable. But, communicate via text and say, hey, thanks for your interest. What time this afternoon are you available? And the key to using that simple technology is it's helping to facilitate the connection so that you can, get that ball rolling and get that driver hired quicker.
Yeah, and I always tell the story about when I was with the trucking company, one of the issues that we had solved was we were constantly in search of drivers, and we were constantly in search of folks to work the docks. But when you go into our website, it says there's no jobs available.
Yeah,
right?
oh, yeah.
The kind of mixed messages piece of it. And we finally got to putting in a system to do that. And I guess, what are you seeing from the successful companies talked a little bit about text follow-up, but, talking about getting to them where they're at, what are you seeing as far as companies and their use of social media when it comes to driver recruitment?
Well, and that's an important part of it, right? You've got to go where they're at. They need to see you. And it's so much more beneficial. Obviously you have to have a social media presence. I think Facebook is probably the most popular in the driver community, but you've got to have that social media presence. You've got to know what separates you as a company, what separates you from the others. And it's really helpful. If I'm sitting here talking about my company constantly and I'm the person, that's what I'm supposed to do, right? I mean, I'm supposed to say that, but it's better if my driver, one of my ambassadors is saying like, hey, this is a great company. I really like, the relationship that I have with them, and it's, great environment, safety matters, those sorts of things. You're going to attract a heck of a lot more people, and having a good driver referral program is also a really good way to, you'll hire more drivers that way. I think you'll hire better drivers that way who know what they're getting into, and they have a really good rapport from the beginning with their peers. But there's a parallel, like I said earlier, in the Great Recession. I remember, I won't name any names, but a sizable fleet in Indiana. I remember talking to him in 2008, and he said, Jeremy, what's going on? What do you think, kind of is happening with drivers? And, talking about how hard it is to hire, nobody's hiring. And he said that he was getting applicants knocking on his door, coming up to their office every single day. And they had a sign that said, we're not hiring. And his name is John. And I said, John, don't do that. Look, I get it. You're not hiring right now. I get that. But they're a CDL driver who's interested in working for you. At the very least, collect their information, because when this thing turns around, these are the first people you can reach out to and say, hey, we are hiring now. We added this new lane and things are picking up. And if you're still interested. And so building a database constantly is really important, especially when there's a shortage of drivers anyway. Building that database, cultivating that database will save you a ton of money because you don't have to keep advertising constantly. You build that database and you remarket to those. So his question back to me, or his comment was, or his question was, do you do any consulting? And I'm like, there, you just got it. You don't need to pay me for that.
Free of charge.
Right.
Well, yeah, let's talk a little bit. You talked a little about time to hire being a metric that should be watched. What are you seeing as far as onboarding techniques? And when I was running the North Dakota Association, I sat on the Upper Great Plains Transportation Institute board, and they did a study about the cost of they brought it down to the cost of turning over one driver, what it was. I think at the time it was like $6,800 or something like that, what the cost of the company was to turn over that one driver. What are you seeing as far as onboarding, or what are some of the best practices for onboarding that you've seen, I guess, from applicant to seat?
Well, you have to think about the whole process from their perspective. And again, that starts with making it easy for them. Electronic, online application that makes it really easy. But then you've got to get started right away. And the most cumbersome part of that qualification process is generally the verification of previous employment. Very manual, and it sucks. It's cumbersome. But getting a head start on that and utilizing some of the tools and databases that are out there that are available, DAC, Higher Rights product, Driver IQ's pre-product, DriverReach has a VOE Plus product. We integrate with all of them. Being able to obtain that information as quickly as possible is going to help expedite the process. But also, again, thinking of it from the driver's perspective, let's say that you've done all your due diligence and it doesn't take you long because you're really efficient. And then you say, okay, driver, come on in. We've got orientation. You get them set up for a pre-employment drug test and a physical, and they come in for orientation. Then they sit down in this classroom style setting. You've got it planned. It's 3 days long, and you've got them filling out so much paperwork, such redundancy in the same information, name, address, date of birth, social, whatnot. You've already collected that data. If you can use a system that can, where you can create electronic versions of those documents or upload those documents and have them execute a lot of that stuff electronically, remotely. Now, when they're coming in for orientation, that stuff's done. You're only spending a day, maybe a day and a half, and you get that driver out on the road. You're not wasting anyone's time. You're still checking all the boxes that you need to. I think those sorts of efficiencies will make a humongous difference. And this is not any newfangled technology that we're talking about. I mean, this is stuff that's it's existed for a long time, but a lot more people are adopting it now because of COVID out of necessity. They've had to become, you can't have a paper application anymore. I mean, there was a few months there where if you had a paper process, you're dead in the water. You needed to be able to manage everything electronically and remotely.
So what are you seeing as far as that reluctancy? Why are people not adopting that side of things? I know here in the office, we've talked about doing, virtual trainings and Zoom meetings and that thing for years.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, that was always, you just can't pull it off and it wouldn't launch and all.
You'll get around to it, right? Yeah. You'll get around to it.
And now all of a sudden it's a mandatory thing where we're doing training to help people understand Zoom and Teams and other products like that. Where does that reluctancy come in from the industry standpoint as far as not adopting some of these electronic communications pieces?
Well, in some cases, it's resources. The fear of what you don't know. If you feel like, well, I'm not real tech savvy, I don't really even know where to begin. It's easy, it's convenient to say, we'll look at that later, or you don't know what it's going to cost, and so you think that it's probably a lot more expensive than it is. It's really not. It's so not expensive. It's so much more affordable today. And so there's, or things that I have a laundry list of things that I need to do, and just where does that rank in priority, and you keep bumping it down. But the catalyst was COVID for a lot of fleets. I mean, honestly, just since April, I'd say about April, we've grown over 40%. Just today alone, while I'm out on a golf course at the Indiana Motor Truck Association, your neighboring state, at a golf outing, 5 more customers signed up and added. And it's so much because there are companies by and large that had nothing, and you just can't. I mean, necessity, in this case, you hear necessity is the mother of invention, but in this case, I think necessity is the mother of adoption, and companies have come around and realized, like, COVID was the catalyst. I have to do this now. And there's no turning back. I mean, I think once you embrace that and you see how simple it is and how much it impacts your business processes, it's a no-brainer. And you kind of just wonder why you didn't do this before.
So do you think that people are more adaptive just because of the technology we use with, smartphones and internet stuff today than what they were probably 5 years ago, and just their reliance on it has gotten so much greater to that their ability to adopt that is, and then on top of which you throw on the ELD mandate, now people got forced into that world.
Yeah.
Has that made that transition easier?
Well, the evolution of technology, I mean, this is not that old. The iPhone, what is it, 12, 13 years old? I mean, I remember in 2009, I can't imagine if this pandemic had hit 10 years ago, we would not have been able to do this. I mean, not that it was easy for everybody, because there's a lot of different types of businesses and not everybody can effectively run their business remotely. But I mean, we just didn't even have, we didn't have the technology or the infrastructure to be able to do just this. Right now, what we're doing there are literally millions of people just in the United States doing the exact same thing, the exact same time, sucking up a lot of bandwidth, but we have the ability to manage that. There's no way we could have done that 10 years ago. So that evolution, if you were going to ask for a time to have a pandemic and have the least disruption to business, I mean, now is better than 10 years ago, and certainly better than, much further back. So I think it's getting more pervasive, in everyday life. People are getting more comfortable with it.
Right. So we talked a little bit, you had mentioned the clearinghouse earlier on, and then we've also got hair follicle testing that's out there as a legislative debate that's going on right now.
That's why I shave.
Right, yeah, exactly. That's why you did that Britney Spears, right? And I guess that's the question is what have you seen as far as the onboarding process when it comes to drug testing and the clearinghouse? And now we're gathering more information, and this is, again, people ask me about hair follicle testing. I'm like, well, you got to be careful what you wish for, because there's a lot of things that happen in there that you may not want to know, or now that you know that, like, your driver pool is now just shrunk incrementally because instead of going 15 or 30 days out, now you're in the months range, right? I mean, everybody wants to know if you got a drug addict behind the wheel. So I guess, what are you seeing as far as drug testing and its impact on that side of the onboarding process?
Well, I'm a huge, and have been since the beginning of my industry career, huge proponent of the drug and alcohol database. I mean, from 2004 or 5, when I first started learning about the concept of it, and I thought, well, how can we get this going? And I was trying to get something to happen in the state of Indiana, where I'm, headquartered. And I was told back then, we're really close at the national level, so hang tight, because federal will preempt whatever happens to state level. And sure enough, only 15 more years later, we finally got something. So that being said, I think hair follicle testing is a natural, for those who really want to focus on being the most accurate, safe and compliant. That makes a lot of sense, but it's not an option right now. Well, I mean, it's an option. It's not admissible. If you pass a urine test and then you fail a hair test, I can't terminate you for failing a DOT drug test right now. That's problematic for the companies that are taking on that additional expense.
Right.
And then they're not even able to hold that driver accountable for that failure. So I think that's something. In fact, in a couple of hours this afternoon, I'm hosting a drug and alcohol testing webinar with a panelist, and we're going to uncover a lot of this information. 3 experts that are on that. I'm a proponent of the concept of hair follicle testing, but I totally get, like, be careful what you wish for. But at the end of the day, now, especially as a father, and my kids out on the road, I know that that number of drivers, sadly, who will test positive from hair follicle testing is 2-3 times that, at least, of what is otherwise in urine analysis results. So
I think easily, and and there again, and that's the thing, is when we have that conversation, I think a lot of people get scared because they're like, oh my gosh, it's 2 or 3 times what's testing positive now. And my argument has always been 2 things. Number one, you don't want those people driving your truck anyway, so you want to know. And the percentage of positive tests after they're in the industry, right? After you put them behind the wheel and in the industry is so low that 2-3 times is kind of almost an irrelevant number. And it's just making sure that you do not put yourself at an adverse risk moving forward. And then the other piece is when you see people walk into your front door, and I agree with this is why the drug clearinghouse is such a great idea. You don't know anything about them, right? So when they first apply, and now in today's modern society, they don't even walk through your front door. They're just applying on the internet when they're sitting at Pilot Flying J somewhere. You don't know what their true history is. So any tool that you have at your disposal to be able to weed out and make sure that you have a good, responsible driver behind the wheel of your vehicle is extremely important moving forward.
Yeah. I can't tell you how many times as a former employer of drivers, very few would fail a drug test, but without a database, if they're employed by me and they go down the street and apply down there and fail a drug test, I would never know.
Right.
And that's a problem.
Right.
So true story, a driver, really very professional, polished driver applied at the staffing company that I used to own. And he said, he just wanted to pick up a day or, here or there on the weekends and stuff. He works 4 or 5 days a week. He's just spotting trailers. He failed a drug test. Well, I knew the company that he worked for. I called the safety director there and I said, hey, look, this is what happened. I believe it's my obligation to let you know. I put it in, DAC back then at the time. This is probably 07. And they ended up parting ways with that driver. And he was upset with us. And it's not my fault. But the reality is, he's disqualified.
Right.
There's a process to go through.
Yeah.
And so, if you're in the database, that doesn't mean you're, a leper and stricken forever. In fact, I think the database will probably encourage more companies to have a 2-strike type of policy. Because they're going to be able to know better. They're going to have there's at least the ability to hold someone more accountable, because if you fail, I'm going to find out with someone else. I'm going to find out, and that's important.
Well, we've kind of walked into this realm of it. Let's talk a little bit about culture of safety and how important that is for a recruitment process, as well as a company policy. What are you seeing out there as best practices of companies who are doing great things when it comes to developing a culture of safety? Communication
is so important. Having established principle of what you stand for from a safety and compliance standpoint, and that expectation you convey every day, early and often, with your employees, and have really good open lines of communication. I don't know if you've ever had if you're familiar with Brian Fielko. He's a CEO of Jetco and just a stand-up guy. He's always, when I think of safety culture, I think of him and what he's instilled in his company. And in fact, I think I actually have a book of his that I read. He actually I've seen him speak a few times.
Yep.
Really, really good book, and practical, implementable practices for companies in their organization. He's passionate about it. And so it's easy to promote him, and because of that. And I know that he's got a six course series coming out called Making Safety Happen. And I think that's really cool. It's something that's available online because he wants to be able to share that. So we're going to be promoting that to our customers. He's been able to give us a discount on that. But I say that just because I don't know anyone else that I've ever met, and especially he's not even in the safety department. He's the CEO of the company, and it will always roll downhill when you have that sort of mindset from up high.
So we got a question from one of the attendees. It says, we are a small carrier and have run ads, used recruiters, worked with third-party vendor services, etc. Currently, we're running ads and having a hard time standing out amongst so many of the other carriers' ads. Do you have any suggestions on what we should include? Is less more?
Definitely, you got to speak to the things that make you different. And here's an example. This is I'll use Monarch Beverage, really good private fleet here in Indiana. They had a recruiter who was running ads. And she said, I'm really having a hard time. They reached out to us to see if we could help. I'm really having a hard time with our OTR division. And I said, okay, I didn't know you guys did OTR. Okay. But I knew what they do, a lot of local, but it's a lot of stops. And I said, I didn't know you had OTR. Okay, well, that makes sense because that's generally the harder. And then I said, well, how often, I said, it's a pretty physical job, right? She goes, no, it's all drop and hook. And I'm like, okay, well, you definitely want to say that, anytime that's, going to help you stand out. But I said, OTR, I didn't know, how long are they out? And she's like, oh, no, they're home every day. And I'm like, well, drop the OTR name. Don't use that language.
Right.
What does it again, if you think about this from a driver's perspective, the more home time that they're going to be able to get, the less physical work that they're going to have to do. Those are certainly the types of things, if that exists, if you can use that to separate yourself from others, those matter. Whether that's, if it's great equipment, if it's a really, close knit, culture, whatever it is that you can identify that really helps you to stand out. But even at the end of the day, you can say all those things, but if you say visit our website, and then they go to your website and click the apply now button, and here download a PDF of the application, they're going to abandon the process. So you got to make it really easy. They should be able to click something and start getting information in really easy from a mobile device.
Well, great. Anything we missed? Anything that you want to comment on, or things that you think that that the attendees would want to hear?
We'll be in Ohio next month.
Yes. Annual conference for the Ohio Trucking Associations next month in September 2021 here in Columbus. Going on no matter what. Told the governor and his staff that we're having our conference no matter what, and they're invited. That will be taking place at the Marriott University area, and so we have both a in-person and virtual option available. So yeah, quite a wide variety of different speakers, including Archie Griffin. So yeah, it will be a great event. I'm looking forward to being able to get out and see people again.
Same here, and I will tell you, man, this is. I mean, today I was out at the golf outing. First time I'd been outside with people, and all safe and being smart and stuff like that. But you don't realize how much you miss, people and especially your friends. Right. And you have great conversations, and sadly, I'm naturally a hugger, so you want so badly to just give somebody a big hug, and that's difficult because I don't know why people are saying don't do fist bumps, do elbows. I'm like, I'm way closer. Our faces are like really close if I'm doing an elbow. Well, fist bump keeps you far apart.
I thought the whole process was you're supposed to sneeze into your elbow and not into your hand, so the hand,
Right, right.
The other interesting part is that we've gotten to this point now where we qualify everything, where we tell people we've been outside and around people, and they're like, oh, but we've been social distancing. So,
right. You have to say that, right?
The new qualifier of everything we talk about. Jeremy, again, thank you for being with us this week on OTA on the Air, and thank you to Transport Services for their continued sponsorship of this broadcast. Next OTA on the Air will be August 20th, where we'll have Rebecca Brewster from ATRI, where Jeremy and I both serve on their research advisory committee. So she'll be kind of doing a prep for convention. And then after that is September 3rd with Steve Bryant from Samba Safety, who is also one of our speakers. Again, Jeremy, thank you so much for being here with us, and we will see you all and talk to you all on August 20th.
And I'll see you in September.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
See you then. Bye.
Thanks, Tom.